Excellent. Good afternoon. We're going to get started with our board meeting. I'd like to begin with our territorial acknowledgement. We are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pay respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. Lethbridge is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. Oki, and welcome. Thank you. So I will move to the consent agenda. So that is there for you. I for sure have one that I'd like to pull just for more explanation on one part of it, which is 3.3, the DSC, Division School Council Report. Is there anything else anybody else would like to pull? Seeing none, we'll move on from that. And next is the approval of the agenda. And are there any additions for the agenda?
Want that 3.3 under what? 12.
Oh, sorry.
12.2 maybe? Information items?
12.2, yep.
Okay,
Perfect.
thank you.
And are there any additions, Christina?
I'd like to add mileage.
Pardon me?
I'd like to add a agenda item on
Under
topic
action
mileage.
items?
Yeah.
Okay, so 10.4. And your item?
On the topic of mileage costs.
Okay. So 10.4 is mileage. Any other additions? The first one was pulling from consent agenda 3.3, the Division School Council report. I just had an information request. So that's going under 12.2, the DSC report. Any other changes to the agenda? So seeing none, if I can get an approval for the agenda as amended, Andrea, and those in favor? And that's carried. Next, we'll move into the minutes. So the minutes are there. Are there any errors or omissions? And I do have a couple. So the first one we're going to deal with is the special meeting of the board on November 27th. So and it's the same change that I'll be making to the next one as well, is Christine Light moved, it says to reconvene. And I would like to change that to moved to come out of in camera at 12:16, just to continue the language that we have typically used. Are there any other errors or omissions for the special board meeting of November 27th? Seeing none, if I can have a motion to approve the minutes for the special board meeting as amended. Craig, and those in favor? And that's carried. So next is the minutes of the regular board meeting of November 28th. And again, I would make the same change to trustee Andrea Anderchuk, move to come out of in camera at 2:51, again for the same reasons. Are there any other errors or omissions? Seeing none, could I have a motion to move the minutes as amended? Andrea, and those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. So next we will get right into our associate superintendent's reports. The first one is business and operations. Christine.
Okay. Alrighty. Christmas theme this year, this month, of course. Under facility services, the K-5 school in Gary Station is pretty much looking as it did last month on the in the construction piece. However, in January, you're going to see gym walls come up, and they're going to be very, very quick. So one week there'll be no gym walls. The next week there'll be gym walls. So normally, what happens in a school build, the gym is one of the hearts of the school when it's being built. So one of the first pieces, next to stairways, which we've already got in place for the school. But normally they do the masonry in place. But given that the timing of when they knew that would occur, cold weather and snow is not really good for that process, and they would have to spend a lot of expense to hoard in the hoard in the space to keep it warm while they did the masonry. So instead what they did is they didn't know the weather was going to be as good as it is. They arranged to have the gym walls prefabricated, and they're being prefabricated in Fort Macleod. And so they will be trucked in, the gym walls, in January, and they'll go up in the space of a week. So it'll be really, really interesting to see, because then you know you have a school when you see the gyms. So that's really exciting. And of course, on the picture in the report is one of the renderings of this interior of the school. We have a little bit of a train theme going on. Being at school in Gary Station, and those are acoustic tiles. And so we have acoustic tiles that look like a train on the very far end looking down from the Learning Commons. We have some circles on the one wall which would emulate the steam from the steam engine, and then we have gears that come up and hang from the ceiling to enter the gears in the train. So it's kind of a neat design. Of course, the school naming process continues. So again, if people go to our website, they do have till February 15th to put in a potential name for the new K-5 school in Gary Station. So looking forward to reviewing those. Next page, we talk about our West Lethbridge Elementary School boundary changes and the engagement we had. We had some great engagement over 2 days in November. About 80 people attended those sessions and provided some really valuable information. We also had an online survey where we received 168 survey responses. The summary for those responses is on the community engagement website under the West Lethbridge Elementary School boundary changes area. So anybody wants to see those, they can certainly do that. And then of course the next steps with that is that information has gone to the School Boundary Alignment Committee for a quick look, but we're going to still consider looking at it some more in January, a little more in depth, and we're going to use that information to inform some potential, either potential future engagement as well as potential boundary change options. So stay tuned for more opportunities to engage on that process. Yep.
I would just like to thank Christine Lee and Jesse Sadlowski for the video that was done. The comments from the public that were there, it amazed them about especially the core capacity, and it really made a difference in the conversations at the different tables. And I'd also like to thank the public for taking the time to come out to those meetings and share their views with us, because they were very sincere and very thoughtful in their views at those meetings. So I'd like to thank the public for that.
Thank you, Craig. Under finance, it's always exciting when we can announce additional money after we've adjusted our budget. So that's we've received some additional funding for enrollment growth. Alberta Education changed the formula for the enrollment enhancement grant. And that changed to providing school divisions who had growth from student one essentially over the prior year with additional funds. The first 100 are funded at $1,500 a student, with the remaining growth is funded FTE at $2,000 per student. And so overall, that was a grant of $751,000. We had already, under the old formula, budgeted about $170,000, and so that gave us an additional $581,000, which is we are currently. I'm sure Mike will talk about this later. Currently reviewing the needs and requests that are coming into, so we can make the best use of those funds. And occupational health and safety, we have, in fact, they just completed today. They started. We did our 9 building site inspections with Trish Syme and Chris Chapman. Went around to 9 of our schools to check on how inspections for safety items, that sort of thing. And so that has been completed. And so they'll develop their reports and the recommendations and review those with the schools in the coming months. And technology. So technology has always got something interesting going on. Actually, Executive Council yesterday got to sit down with our technology team to look at how they would respond to a cyber event. We looked at our incident response plan so that we're all aware if something bad goes on, our roles and responsibilities. But we also talked about, they kind of demonstrated to us in this event, here's some of the tools we'd use to track down something. So for instance, if the internet ran slow, how would we go about to see if it's an issue that's internal or issue because somebody's come in and done something nefarious. And so there's a lot of moving parts, and it was quite fascinating to walk through that. So we really do thank our tech team for the work they do in keeping us safe. And also, you need to keep yourself safe. So we put some cybersecurity tips in. At this time of year, people are rushing. We're trying to get out the door. We're not thinking, and that's when the bad actors strike. They will send an email and say, hey, please click on this link because you need to respond to this right away. It's urgent, that sort of thing. They'd sense of urgency. And they trick you into doing something that then can compromise your own personal data. It can also, of course, compromise the organization. So we just want to remind people just to slow down. Do I have someone, the latest one is those like the permission click, give per signing into a form, you need to sign. I do sign electronic documents on a regular basis, and so I have to watch for those. If I'm not expecting someone to send me an electronic document, I look at it very carefully to determine, is it really true or not? And when in doubt, just don't do it. If it's that important, someone will pick up the phone and call you or contact you. It's usually the rule of thumb. Cybersecurity, and then that's lots of events going on, lots of wonderful celebrations, and the schools are active in a buzz. And so I had an opportunity to go to Churchill's Mean Girls production, and that was fantastic. And I'm looking forward to going to a couple concerts this week. So all good.
Excellent. Thank you. Andrea.
Thank you for your report. It's always so festive looking around this time of year. I love it. And thank you for all those safety tips for us. And I just wanted to say that Johnny Mantella was listening last time, so he sent me an email the next day about the tech department helping the middle and high schools with their acquisition of e-sport equipment. So I thought that was really nice that he reached out. So thank you. It's nice to know that they're getting it out to all of the schools so they have. So thank you. And with the board realignment committee, is there a chance to attend a meeting like that even if you're not on it?
As a trustee?
Yeah. Or no? Or it doesn't have trustees?
That would be at the pleasure of the board, I would suggest.
So we have that committee. We've already picked trustees for that.
Oh,
And the information will come back to the board.
okay.
Most of the information is being shared anyways with the whole board in
Yes.
regards to the raw data of the information. So trustees can be informed, but the committee is looking at the planning and the next steps and all those pieces, and just the document that you saw posted publicly. That was done together with the committee. So it's those pieces that the committee is looking at in the next steps. But if there's parts that we can include others on the board, we certainly will. So.
After attending that night and then reading data, there were clear directions, I think. Thanks.
Craig?
Yeah, just responding to Andrea. No matter what the boundary review committee comes up with, it always has to come back to the board for final approval. And so, and it'll also go back out to the parents. And so there's lots of checks and balances in it to make sure that people's voices are heard and that the board is always informed about where we're going with it.
And we can ensure as a committee that we're bringing anything that would warrant a further discussion from the whole board. We can certainly be bringing those pieces back if there's pieces for more discussion, but it's not going to be a wham, here you go, you need to make a decision on this. It's going to be a lead up process. And there's many steps that Christine has laid out in the plan moving forward. So, yep.
On that note, I'd like to thank the trustees that also showed up at the two meetings, Andrea and Christine Light, and yourself and myself, because it was valuable to go around and sit at the different tables. So thank you, Andrea.
Yes, it was definitely good to be able to talk and hear the passion from not only parents but staff in the room, and to hear what was important to each of them and why it was important. So it was good. So in regards to the report, thank you for the report. Definitely lots of information in there. Your department, all of the areas do so much. One piece I just want to make sure is on the simple is on the 3D printer workshop. It's actually January 17th, not 12th. It's all good, but I just want to make sure that it's noted as January 12th, or it's noted as January 12th, but it is January 17th from SAPDC. And then I know that you cover school buses, and rather than holding it off for my division highlights, I just wanted to say, driving around in the mornings, it's delightful to see the school buses out, and they have Christmas lights inside of them. So I just think that the work that our drivers do for our students is, they could just get in a bus, drive our kids to school every day and drive them home every day, but they go that extra mile. So I just think that it should be noted that it's neat, and I'm out and about at that. It's dark in the morning, right? So you see them coming down the street, and I just happen to be driving past where LCI's buses all go in, and lots of those buses are lit up, and down 13th, the number of buses. So it's great to see just that extra mile from our drivers, that they don't need to do that, but they do that little bit extra.
Yeah,
So,
thank you for that, because I have also heard that from parents who told me that they enjoy seeing the.
Yep. Craig.
Yeah, and I can't remember if we talked about it in November and that, but I know the government has said they've delayed implementing the rules on the distance. Does that affect us very much?
I'm having a brief meeting with Southland tomorrow, but unless Southland says they can't meet the busing requirements, we're going to go ahead with the changes. That's our plan anyways.
All right, thank
Yeah.
you.
Any other questions or comments? Excellent. Thank you, Christine. Moving on for instructional services. And Michael, cover that for now.
You bet. And obviously won't go through everything. I'll just hit some of the highlights. Under Aaron Herket's section here, talks about the learning disruption grant. So we did get some additional money. And what that was after COVID, the province has brought in some assessments and also some funding so we can hire teachers that can assist for students that are behind where they need to be, particularly in literacy and numeracy. Unfortunately, it's about half of what it was last year. The silver lining in it was, the nice thing about it was, it kind of, it required our elementary administrators to talk a little bit about the Boost program, how it worked last year. And one of the conversations was it was probably spread a little too thin. So we had some schools that maybe didn't have as much time allocated to it. And so rather than trying to, what's the word I'm looking for? Spread it thinly, that's what I'm trying to say, across a bunch of schools, there was an agreement amongst the administrators that we would really target some specific schools and give them a little more time. So we're excited to see how that works. Hopefully that's something that the government will continue to fund, because I don't think that any gaps that we have in our learning are necessarily going to disappear the further we get away from COVID. So yeah, hopefully that's something that'll continue, but really appreciated the collaborative work. I think that's something that I wanted to highlight. Then moving on, Kristen, for the anti-racism, anti-oppression. And this is just a beginning answer to these questions, but I know in the last meeting there were some questions about what's going on with the committee, that sort of thing. The anti-racism, anti-oppression committee has been meeting this year. Really a lot of their focus has been, particularly lately, on working with Garrett and summarizing some of the data that was collected last May from surveys, and pretty close to, I think, being ready to share that with the public. We'll make sure trustees get an opportunity to look at that and provide any feedback before it goes out. But that's been one of the things they've been working on. As well, one of the things that we've really been talking about is there's a bit of a tendency to go, oh, well, we have a policy and procedure, so what are the things that we're doing? And really what we wanted to do and what Morag has done is taken a look at, well, what are we currently doing that relates to that that's already there? And so as you can see, there's a number of things listed in there, cultural events hosted in the schools. A lot of the work that the Poverty Intervention Committee does is about removing barriers and those sorts of things. So there's a bunch of things that we do already that are in place that really support that work. And then what will the Administrator Committee be doing this year? As I said, looking at the survey data, and then also looking at how can we build some capacity within our administrative group and within our staff to help continue the work moving forward. So, those are sort of the plans. Now I'm sure there'll be more conversation on that and what the committee's been up to, but that's where they're up to now. If you can look over, if you can scroll down, Kristen, and we'll hit just the highlights of, actually just go back up a bit, Andrew Krell's off-campus coordinator. I know there's questions about the work that we do with Careers the Next Generation, those folks, and really the work that Andrew does. Just so you know, we are partnering with Career the Next Generations to hire a position, a little bit of money from Lethbridge School Division, a little bit of money from Career Generations. And then that position will help to promote career awareness, workshops, dual credit opportunities, employment preparation, internships, all those things that we still see are a bit of gaps. We do good work in that regard, but we really got one person, Andrew, looking at a lot of it. So if we can partner up with folks like Career the Next Generation, we can get a little bit better bang for our buck. You know, I will say, another thing I'll say is I've got a meeting in January. Morag may join that meeting as well with Career Next Generations, just to talk about kind of a meet and greet, get to know them, establish some relationship, and talk about maybe some opportunities for how we can work together in the future. Again, I think we do a good job in this area, but there's lots of room to grow here, particularly as it relates to making sure kids know what opportunities are available to them, whether that be in trades, whether that be internships, apprenticeships, but also what are those supports for if you're going into post-secondary, how do you get the information that you need, whether it be scholarships, whether it be admission requirements, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, and then I think that covers everything on that. Certainly with career transitions, they're another group that we work with. And I'm just looking to make sure I'm not mixing up career transitions and the next generation. But career transitions, they also work with us and they provide activities like career exploration activities, intros to the trade, university exploration days, those sorts of things. So we're fortunate there's a lot of community partners out there, and we anticipate this is an area that we're going to continue to grow in. We do a lot of good work in this area. We're fortunate to have Lethbridge College, the University of Lethbridge, but this is definitely an area that the government has a lot of focus on. So we anticipate that not only will they continue to provide that focus, but they'll also continue to provide dollars so we can partner with different community agencies. Yeah, go ahead, Craig.
And maybe we can do that in January, but it would be nice to find out, have an update on the, what's they call it, the
Southern Alberta Collegiate.
Yeah, Southern Alberta Collegiate, and what's happening there. I know we got funding from the government for 6 divisions, a fair amount of funding. So in January, it would be nice to get an update on where that is and how that's progressing.
Yeah, and we can definitely do that. We'll need to give a more update. Technically, the collegiate model doesn't start till next year, but we have started it down here in Southern Alberta. Some of the divisions have got together and we are moving forward. So yeah, we'd be happy to give you an update on that.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. So I had at the last meeting brought forward a couple of items. So just in regards to the anti-racism, anti-oppression section, and I appreciate that the information is provided in this update, and that's great. I'm just wondering, I know Garrett's working on the survey that was online. Request has also been made in regards to, and I know that you've been at DSC when the request has been made for the other data that came out of at DSC. There was some survey, I don't remember if it was called a survey, but there's a request for that information. That was in June when Andy Teisla came and presented, and parents have been asking for what happened to that information because it was That was when we had quite a large number of people at that meeting, and they handed out the papers and then collected those papers back, and parents haven't heard anything from that. So there's just curiosity if there's going to be some gathering of data of that information that was collected, or how it might have informed procedure. And then, do you want to answer that, or? Okay.
I'm not sure on what was communicated about where that, if a summary of that would be shared or anything like that. However, I know the board did receive a summary of that. I think in June, a summary of that information is my understanding. And that information was definitely part of the information that was used to inform the ARAO procedure.
Okay.
So they did look at that and review that as they're working through the procedure.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then in regards to DIPT, which is, sorry. Okay. Yep, go ahead.
On that same note, I know there was also a request from Division School Council, because that was a survey that was put out at the division in that setting. The Division School Council, I know they made a request to have that come full circle and come back to the table for feedback or conversation. So if that comes there, I can also put that in my report to come back. So I don't think we've seen that back yet, but that request was made.
For which survey?
The ARAO, the survey that was done at DSC in June. So there was a request for that results to come back to DSC, or that they were looking for, I don't know, for a full circle was what the terminology was being used when they were discussing it. So when that comes back to the Division School Council table as well, I can add that to our report and report to the board on that as well.
And then my other question was in regards to DIPT, where that's where I get a lot of questions, which is the diversity inclusion parent table. And just the parents are wondering what's happening with that, because it was definitely a very engaging meeting with lots of discussion. So just looking for, and if you don't have the answer, that's fine. But I think just that would be another piece, is that what is the direction of that DIPT table, and follow up from the session that happened in June.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Can provide that.
Sounds good.
Yeah. We'll just leave it at that.
Sounds good. And then at the last meeting, I was the one that asked about the career stuff. So I appreciate to have the update on that. And it's great to see that connection with Careers Next Generation, and the hiring of that support person that will be working with our division. So that's great. Just want to highlight the great work that we are doing in off-campus work, and really the importance of that. Provincially, with our ministers, when they received their mandate letters, in 13 of the mandate letters across the province, it is mentioned for career pathways for high school students and the connection to that. So I think the work that our division does and is doing, and the plans coming up, are wonderful and will help lead to what our government has obviously made as a priority, which is student career pathways, and how they're going to get to where they need to be so that we have a workforce in our province. So I think that that's great. Our division is making those leaps and bounds to be able to do that, because this is quite a bit that's in here. So thank you for that, and the work that's being done, and the movement forward. I think that there's funding, and I know that one position is partially funded, so that's great. And I think that we'll be seeing hopefully future funding. And I know years ago, funding that our division had for career counselors was certainly pulled years ago, and it's something that's missing from our parent community, or student community. But I hear it from our parents and students. And I know when we had our first strategic planning session as this board, that was one thing that we spoke about, was the loss of that career counseling piece. So I think that this work that is being done to ensure our students have the best that they can for those career pathways is really important. So I appreciate that this work is happening, and we're making those steps forward. So thank you. Are there other comments or questions? Thank you to Morag and her team. I know that they've had a lot on their plate, as well as some juggling of staff with some absences due to a variety of reasons. So thank you for the work that they're doing. And next up, Robbie.
Well, my report is not nearly as festive as the other reports. I do have a highlight for you. I do want to highlight the December 8th U of L walkabout. It's always an incredible experience. There were about 170 PS3 students, 85 of which will be graduating at the end of this month. And it's always thrilling to chat with each of them because they're just so excited that they're finished and looking forward to the next steps in their careers. What I also want to highlight is the amount of traffic that stops at Lethbridge School Division booth, which is incredible. There were 23 school divisions represented at this walkabout this year. And I want to send a shout out to our schools, our teachers, and our administrators who offer those opportunities, because if they didn't do PS3, it's highly likely they did either Ed 2500, PS1, or PS2, and most of them had very positive experiences and always want to come back to chat with us about what career opportunities look like in Lethbridge. So wanted to make sure I highlighted that and our continued positive relationship with the University of Lethbridge.
Craig, go ahead.
Yeah, Robbie. On the second bullet under supporting schools, number of teachers hired since November 15th is 10. Now, are those new positions or are they just renewal of contracts or?
They've been hired to replace as replacements.
Oh, replacements.
Yes,
For sick leave or maternity leave or something?
that's correct.
Okay.
Andrea.
With the new money that we got last month, has some of the money gone to extra staff to address learning needs that still need quite a few?
Mike may want to speak to this in his report, so I don't want to overstep, but none of the numbers in my report reflect that as of yet. But we did put out a request for what needs look like across the division, and we're reviewing those.
That's great to hear. So that is encouraged throughout the year that you're finding that still needed more. So would be encouraged to out to you.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. Thanks.
See no other comments. I just want to also reiterate with the such importance of having those student teachers within our schools. And I know that we often get to capture them after and hire them, whether that's in subbing or whether that's in positions, but it's just wonderful to have them in our schools and our staff that support them to be able to, because if our staff didn't agree to do it, they wouldn't happen. So I think that it's such an opportunity for not only those student teachers, but for our students to have, it's often the team teaching when the two of them are in the room, and it's just new ideas and just, it's great to see. So thank you for our staff that do that and the coordination that has to happen. Thank you. Moving on to superintendent's report, board priorities.
Okay, yeah, and I'll hit a few of the highlights here. And actually, it's almost like we planned this, but we actually didn't. But a good segue, because I was going to talk about the U of L walkabout, and I won't talk about, I agree with everything that you said. Just also, it really highlights the importance of our collaboration with the University of Lethbridge. They're a very, very important partner for us. We really appreciate the opportunity to work with them. And I mean, you know, the graduates are outstanding, but the opportunity to work with the U of L, the Faculty of Education, and the entire university, I think, is a tremendous benefit to this division. Skipping down to literacy, I mentioned earlier sort of what we've been doing with some of the learning loss funding and having some boost teachers coming in, doing some more targeted interventions. So hopefully that will help, and we'll certainly continue to advocate for that funding to continue on, even as we move away from COVID. Under numeracy, it talks about professional learning will be provided for elementary teachers who teach combined grades within our division. And a lot of this has to do with the new curriculum. And really what I want to emphasize here is what people don't realize is you bring in new curriculum, and it's not necessarily difficult to figure out what's in the curriculum, but when you bring in new curriculum, it has all these spin-off effects, and combined grades is a great example. So now all of a sudden you have combined grades, and the way you teach your curriculum really changes, and because the curriculum changes now, it means you need to do things differently. So whenever we have a curriculum change, and there's going to be a bunch of curriculum change over the next few years, it creates quite a bit of work at the school level, and things that are easy and that you sort of know how to do them, all of a sudden you go, whoa, we need to do this in a different way. And so just mostly highlighting that there's lots of professional development that goes into that, and lots of additional time that goes into making those adjustments when the curriculum changes. You'll see under experiential learning in that on December 7th, Jesse Sedlowski and some of the text folks, they did a workshop coding for elementary teachers, and really love to see that. And that's very, very exciting. And any opportunity we get to particularly make sure that teachers are more comfortable with the concept of coding, because often as teachers, we want to have all the answers before we try and teach something. We're a little reluctant to jump in if we're not experts on that, and you don't necessarily have to be an expert. A lot of it is you can kind of let the kids go and run with it. Then we'll skip all the way to wellness. I wanted to hit a highlight there. Some that's maybe not great, but it talks about the nutrition funding that we receive from Alberta Ed is going to be entirely spent by the end of the year. That's a good thing, but it also tells us that we're seeing increasing demand. So it's a good thing in the sense that, we are able to provide those, those opportunities for families, but certainly a sign of challenges in our communities, so something to be aware of. Then down here, SEVA certification was offered December 11th and 12th, and we've certified over 120 staff this year. Really just pleased with the efforts to continue to build capacity to work with students who have a variety of needs. So always grateful for that work. And then it talks about, as we scroll down under building staff capacity to meet the needs of all learners, Karma is working on building the capacity of our teachers to teach EAL learners impactfully, doing residencies, those sorts of things. And I think that's something that we're really going to need to continue to focus on. We are certainly seeing higher numbers of EAL students in our division, and we don't know for sure, but we anticipate that trend will continue. You never know exactly what's going to happen with demographic trends in the city, but we suspect that'll probably continue. So that's going to need to be an area of focus for us for sure. We have lots of good practice in this division, but it's hard to prepare in advance because often you don't know particularly when we're talking about students and families that are new to our community and new to Canada, it's hard to predict when they'll arrive and what their level of proficiency will be and what their experiences are. So often you have to be in a bit of a reactive mode. So we're going to continue to put resources into that and support the system. That's it for I don't want to hit them all because you can read. So yeah, any questions?
Craig, go ahead.
Yeah, just on the wellness, the nutrition. Now, is that funding from January to December, or we've spent the funding till the end of June?
Yeah, I believe we still have funding going into the year. Do you know on that, Christina?
Yeah, it's my understanding is that it's school year based. So this is like the end of the school year. Be on track if we keep spending at the rate we are.
Oh, okay.
Which, for context, last year we were like we had money left over at the end of the year, and so this year we already know we're on track. That is alarming. So.
Yeah. Traditionally, we haven't spent it all. So.
And just for other context, just from the Poverty Intervention Committee from last year, we had this conversation a lot. Is that the mental health capacity building team and some of the work that they do and their crew around them also do a lot of like diverting of nutrition needs to other community resources that support nutrition, knowing that things like food banks, for example, have other services available, and that food is like some of the easiest financial strain to remove. And so if community resources are also oversubscribed, which they are, and this is almost the end, like that's very alarming for sure. So highlighting it.
So when you're talking about it, that's just funding till next June. Okay.
I think
June 2024. Yeah. The big thing is, as Christina said, we normally aren't able to spend all of our money there, and looks like we're going to, which suggests we have higher level of need in the community.
I had the same question. I think the confusion just comes in because in the report it says is anticipated to have been entirely spent by the end of this year. So I think that is just this school year, and all of us as trustees are like the end of this year.
Yeah. When
So-
when you say that in December, and we're about to turn the
We're at
calendar
the
over
end
to
of December. Yeah.
2024, you
Are
go,
we out?
"Whoa, yeah,
Yes.
what-
Yes.
What are we dealing with here?"
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Jenny, go ahead.
I did just meet with the Poverty Intervention Committee earlier this month, and we have received some very generous donations. They are one-time donations, but there has been a significant infusion of money into that work and through that committee. And so we are in a good place financially at this point. I mean, a good place, I say, I mean, I don't know if that's the best way to describe that because there's always need. But we are in a better place than we anticipated previous to that is maybe the more accurate way to put that. But we are very grateful to those who have made generous donations, and we will be able to provide more than we thought we were going to be able to.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. One was around the nutrition piece. The next one, and it might be, you might ask Christine this, but it's in your report, and it's under the collaboration with other school authorities, and it's the third bullet. So it speaks in regards to the tech team met with various tech teams from the southern region, which is awesome and fabulous. I'm happy to hear that. One of the pieces that we as trustees are doing is some advocacy in regards to the SuperNet, as well as the piloting of digital PATs and diplomas and some of the challenges that are going to be presented with that. And we brought this up and had a discussion at our zone meeting. So I'm just wondering, was there an opportunity, and you might not know the answer to this, but was there an opportunity, or did they have discussion with the other tech teams? Because as trustees, it would be great if the other divisions' tech teams were supporting their trustees in the other divisions as well.
I know one of two of the answers. I do know they did talk about the PATs and the diplomas and the
Okay.
tool that's being used in the concern out there. But I do not know if they talked about bandwidth.
Okay.
They talked about a lot of issues, but I don't specifically.
Okay. Sounds good. So, and we'll continue as trustees to have those conversations, especially at the zone level, and then provincially whenever we can with any ministers. And then if the tech team continues to help us with any information that we need, I know we've heard from some other divisions that some that we would have suspected potentially that the SuperNet would be a challenge, but they're not. They're saying that it's not the same challenge because they don't, and I see it as probably there's not as many students writing at that one time. So when the schools, yes, so the drain on the system isn't necessarily there because there's no school that day. They're doing diploma exams, and that drain isn't there for the SuperNet. So it's not necessarily the same messaging when we're advocating. But I just think that if the same information could be shared with other trustees and other divisions would be important. So you have an answer?
Yeah, well, no,
Okay.
I'll just add to that second point because I think there's an important, and it's not something we need to get down in the weeds on, but just sort of an FYI. The government is looking at expanding using computers for more of the written portions, so beyond just language arts, English, social studies, but getting into, because biology, math, chemistry, a lot of those other exams will have a written portion as well. And so they are working on piloting a much more interactive tool where kids can, write and write electronically, that sort of thing. From everything I've heard, it's a really a potentially fantastic tool. But one of the challenges that'll happen is if you look at your bandwidth right now, maybe it's adequate in some spots. Obviously, in our division, it's challenging. But if now all of a sudden we expand the internet use beyond writing for English and social and language arts to all of a sudden biology, math, chemistry, physics, and so now all of a sudden there are more demands for our bandwidth, and then you put PATs in there and you expand it there. That's another concern. So you have to have the infrastructure in place to run that program. It sounds like it's really exciting. It's just going to be, so that might help our argument moving forward in terms of the infrastructure and bandwidth space, because I think there's going to be more need for it.
And then I know it's kind of an aside from the tech team piece, but one piece that has come forward to me is in regards to the moving to digital PATs and diplomas is challenging in the fact that some kids need paper and pen, right? They need that, as well as the data out there that supports that over the tech piece. So those are challenges as trustees when we're advocating that we need to ensure that that piece is brought forward as a voice too. So, and then my other question is, and I got to scroll down to it. So it is in the collaborative partnership to support learning. I just got to scroll to. So my question is in regards to the first bullet. So Bridges and our inclusive education team are working closely to support 3 student programs that cannot operate in our school setting at this time. Can you tell me a bit more about that and what that's about?
Yeah, I wouldn't talk specifically about the students necessarily in this particular instance, but it is common for us to have students for a variety of reasons who aren't able to be in the regular classroom setting, and Bridges will typically work with us to provide community programming, that sort of thing. So yeah, so that's what that's referring to. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So one question is that Bridges Consulting as the company?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not
Sounds good.
100% sure.
And then when we talk about to support 3 student programs, those are 3 individual students, not 3 separate programs that are individual students. Okay.
Yeah, it's typically individuals.
Okay. Sounds good. I just didn't know if we were offering some separate programs that we weren't knowing about.
No,
Okay.
yeah, no, not new programs. Not that I'm aware of. If there's something different, I'll let you know, but no, I don't think
Figured
so.
I better get clarification.
That's a good question.
So, Craig, and then Christina, did you have your hand up? No. Okay, go ahead, Craig.
No, I was just going to add on to the, when we're talking about PATs and digital PATs and that, is that this is a good area for us to work with other, especially rural divisions, who have students that don't have access to computers and must take the test with paper and pen. And I think it would be good if we as a urban board also supported their efforts, because then it shows some unity towards the Department of Education. Especially, we might not have a lot of kids in our division, but there are divisions that have a lot of kids that don't have access to that. So,
For sure. Tyler.
Just wanted to back up a bit. I just wasn't sure if you were going to talk about it, so I just waited. But just back to Andrea's question in there regarding the funding for enrollment growth, the additional funds that we have. Christine Lee, we're running how much of a deficit this year projected in our budget?
Oh, it's about $1 million. We're bringing our reserve down to about 1.79%.
I thought it was even more.
Yeah, it could be more than that.
I was just going to say, like, we've got this additional funding that come in, but I don't think we should be, trying to spend the money. If we've already staffed and allocated and did everything, and did so in a way that we're using our reserves, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better as we go forward. Our reserves are getting dangerously low. So I'm just not sure where that process is at. As far as now, definitely if there are some extreme hotspots that need to be filled, we definitely should do that. But I don't think that just because we got funding halfway through the year that we should necessarily do everything we can to spend that funding in the last half of the year, knowing that we ran a deficit this year and it will be continuing going forward. So I just wanted to make that point there as far as that goes, because we are as we go forward, we are starting to have stronger and bigger and tougher decisions being made as far as our funding is going. So,
Jenny?
The calculation for that funding, what does that look like moving forward? Is that, like, now that we've been brought up, it's increased, we had 500,000 more than we expected. Is that something we can anticipate again, or how is that determined each year?
No, this is a one-time grant to recognize enrollment growth. They had previously an enrollment growth grant that recognized enrollment growth over 2%, gave you a little bit of a top up. And so, and then they added this one, it's one time for this year where it's from basically student one, and then they changed the rates. And so when we do our budget, we won't have that grant in there, but we will have an adjustment for the growth we didn't get funded for this year at 50%. And so that comes in as well as our projections. And so we're currently working on what that looks like, which you will see in your first January committee of the whole, what we anticipate our revenues to look like.
So, sorry, just so that I'm understanding clearly, does that mean that when they calculate next year, they go back to that 1,500 per student rate?
No, the old formula was 2% and it was 1,050 per student, unless you were over 4%, and then it was, I think, 1,500 or 3,000 a student, and which we never hit. You have to be like a Calgary, Edmonton that has extreme growth. This was a change in grant. You had either or, depending on which one you fit under. You got the better of the two. We fit under the new one they put in as a one-time. 1,500 for the first 100 and 2,000 for the those over 100. So staggered. You get about 100 at 1,500, about 300 at.
And that won't be the formula next year?
It says one time in the funding manual. So we're going to assume it disappears unless they make a change at budget. So when they do budget, they change all the time. They change formulas and how they allocate stuff. So there could be a change in the funding manual that recognizes that a little more than what they have now.
And sorry, one more question. You mentioned we're bringing our reserves down to, what was the number you said?
After we did our budget update, if if we spend to exactly what we say we will, that sometimes occurs, sometimes it's over, sometimes it's under, be 1.79% is our accumulated surplus from operations.
That's what I said. Okay, thank you.
There are other questions for Mike on the board priorities report? Seeing none, thank you, Mike, for that. And if you can move on to donations and support.
Yep, and I know you've read this, and again, say this every month, and we will say it every month because we are incredibly fortunate for the donations that we get and the support that we get from our community. Jenny certainly noted that in her discussion about the Poverty Intervention Committee, and we just continue to be very, very fortunate. One to certainly highlight Victoria Park High School, almost $10,000 for Christmas hampers, and if you get an opportunity to be in Victoria Park when they do their Christmas hampers, I think it's Thursday morning, but I'm not 100% sure on that. It is incredible to see all the food and hampers that they have ready to go. A lot of work goes into making that happen. So yeah, thank you to everybody who's donated. Unless there are questions, I'll go on to school showcases. Great. And I won't read through everything because I know you've read it all. Just for Emmanuel Christian Elementary School, one of the things I want to emphasize, and when you read their highlights, it really comes out. The masterful way they blend their faith beliefs and education. The two things are very interwoven, very related. They do a nice job of combining education with their faith and how those two things tie together. And then it really is a school that believes very much in community, like all of our schools, but they're tied together certainly by the faith portion of their community as well. So something that always stands out about Emmanuel Christian Elementary School, and really appreciate them. And then Senator Joyce, I think you look at, first of all, I just want to, not sure if you've heard about the band competition that Dr. Plaxton and Senator Joyce did together, and Sarah and Kyle Harmon, and they ended up winning. Were one of the top 10 CBC Music Challenge distinguished. They were one of the winners in it, and if you got a chance to watch the performance, it was very, very cool. So they're very proud, very excited, and as well they should be. It was absolutely awesome. But I think the one thing when you look at this report from Senator Joyce is you just see the balance in that school. They talk about fine arts, they talk about athletics, they talk about academics, they talk about character education, really hit all of those areas. And that's, I know Senator Joyce, and rightfully so, is known for its emphasis on technology, but really is a well-rounded school that provides kids with just so many opportunities, so many cool experiences, and one of the things that I really admire about Senator Joyce. That's it for me, unless there's questions.
Questions for Mike? Go ahead, Craig.
No, I would just echo that, because as the liaison last year, I was just amazed at everything they do with the kids, and even in their CTS program shop and that they really want the kids to have a well-rounded education. So
And I'll just add, so ICS is my school this year, and it's just been such an honor to be able to be there and to be a part of how they ensure the faith piece is there for students with the education piece, right? Like it's just, and the heart that's in that school is just absolutely amazing. I've been able to be there and participate in a couple of their chapels as well as their school council meetings, and it's just fabulous. With Senator Joyce Fairburn, it was one of my schools a number of years ago, and one of the biggest things that I saw there is that all of their fine art stuff is fully run by their students, and it's absolutely amazing to see their students run every piece of any production or anything that they do. So it just really is, there's a place for every student in that school, and it's just showcased that every student is a leader, and they show that. So definitely two great schools to highlight this month. All of our schools are amazing, but these are great highlights. And next is a calendar of events.
Yeah, calendar of events, and they're there so you can read them. Can't believe we're thinking about 2024 already. It's going to be weird to say that we're in the year 2024. Yeah, and just a reminder, on the 18th, we will have the board administrators have lunch together and do a bit of budget stuff. So
then if I can add, and I don't know who is on the Indigenous Education Committee, but I'm quite certain the meeting is January 24th. Who is on the, so was that January 24th? Okay. I can look at mine maybe faster. Go ahead, Craig.
I can't remember, but we have a boundary committee meeting.
Oh, yep, January 9th for that.
Yep.
At 1 o'clock. So Indigenous Education Committee is on the 24th at 9 a.m.
Administrators Committee.
That's, Mike had just highlighted that. Yeah. Okay. We're good with that. The next is annual assurance results report addendum. Go ahead, Mike.
yeah, so we missed something in the annual assurance results report. We actually had it done, but it didn't get into the report because it's brand new. So just give you the background on it. There are some provincially mandated assessments for early years literacy and numeracy that we need to do. Traditionally, this data hasn't been included in the report, but now the expectation is that it's included and it'll be ongoing part of our package. But we just missed it. We had it done, so we put it in there. It's on page 26 of the report, but we wanted to highlight it for you, give it the page, and then I think I probably need to kind of explain the data to you really quickly because it is a little bit confusing, and there's a couple parts where I might have to, it's going to be a little tricky to explain, but we'll do our best. So I'm just going to give a high 30,000 foot view of it, and then we can get down into some details if you'd really like to, and if you're okay, then we don't need to get into this. Okay, so the first chart basically just tells us, essentially it's just telling us the number of kids that were getting some sort of intervention. Okay, so they're identified through assessments as requiring investment or intervention. So you'll see, like in grade 1, there was 847 students that were assessed, 205 that were identified for literacy intervention, 246 for numeracy, 117 actually got literacy intervention, 77 got numeracy intervention. Okay, so where not everybody will get intervention. Just because you require intervention doesn't mean that you'll specifically get the boost intervention. There's a whole variety of interventions that could be in place. Some of them could be very, very significant one-to-one. They might already be occurring. There might be educational assistance support, that sort of thing. Some of it might be pretty mild and is just done in the class through the teacher, those sorts of things. So it really depends on the students. As you look into chart number 2 there, this is related to literacy. Kristen, is there any way you could make that bigger? Even on my own chart, I'm having a hard time reading what's on me in the package. So it's going to be hard for me to give you accurate information. Thank you. Okay, so we'll look at chart number 2. So it tells you the first column is just the type of assessment used. You don't really need to know about that. Second chart is total number of students as identified as being at risk for literacy on their initial assessments. Then they get intervention, and you'll see the next column. So in grade 1, 234 goes down to 192. So as you can see, when we did the final assessments, there was less students requiring intervention. So that was positive. That was a good trend. Then you'll see these next two columns are frankly a little tricky, and we think as the government gets a little more sophisticated in terms of how they share this information, I think this will be a little more understandable. That first column just tells you how many months behind the student is when they're initially assessed. So in the grade 1 there, students were at average of 5.18 months behind sort of the norm for that grade. Okay, does that make sense? So that part's sort of clear in mud. I'm not sure why that column, in my view, it should have a minus. If it's going to be behind and then the next one is behind, they both should have minuses, but that's just me. It reads a little off to me. The next one is, this is the weird one. So it says average number of months gained at grade level by at-risk students in literacy at time of final assessment. So in grade 1, minus 0.152. So does that mean that kids got intervention actually decreased? That's the way it looks, but that's not the way it is in reality. So we've been talking with the government. Actually, Erin Herk, was great. She even texted me, if you ever really want to get down in the weeds, you can look at CBE's numbers, and they're the exact same, and they have a really nice explanation of it. This is something that, we've seen provincially, that this part of the data, the way they're reporting it to me is just a little bit off. Really what this is talking about is, so if you're in grade 1, what happens with literacy is through the course of grade 1, you should be growing and improving, right? And different grades, you're going to grow even faster than other grades. And so what is happening is you've got kids who are developing at a typical rate, they're growing at a certain rate. And what the government is trying to do is compare these kids that had intervention that were behind, that were maybe here, where did they get to? So you could still be behind, but have made significant gains. So, the growth pattern in grade 1 could have been, you should have had 8 months growth, and these students grew by 6 months. So there's 6.5 months, so they're 1.5 behind. But part of the story is they've actually grown by 6.5 months. That data, it's not super sophisticated the way it's being reported right now. It's a little tricky for us to navigate. What we're seeing, what it tells us is that, yes, we see a trend of, we're seeing less kids requiring intervention. That's good. We're seeing kids that are behind and they're catching up, but they're maybe not catching up as quickly as we'd like in the literacy area. But, there are improvements that are occurring. Does that sort of make sense, or is that still pretty?
So you're thinking that this means that they've gained 6.6 months?
Yeah, pretend that's a theoretical example, but yes.
Because to me, I see the average number of months gained. So how many months did they gain? It's not a difference from how far behind they were to where they are now. It's that they gained, how many months they gained, right? You think it's 6 months versus 1.5 months?
No. What I'm saying is when they calculate that last column there,
yeah,
it's compared, it's a moving target. So what did they, it says minus 1.52. So what does that mean, that they went down 1.52 months? That they're
right.
now behind
even more.
So if they were 5.18, now they're behind 5.18 plus minus 1.52, and that's not our understanding of the data.
Right. Okay.
Our understanding of the data is that last column, and like I said, I can read the CBE explanation because it's actually quite good. One of the better ones that I've seen. Our understanding of the data is that that's compared. So they're behind 1.52 months compared to where the norm would be. Not necessarily compared to where they were specifically. That makes sense. But I don't, I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm not super confident on that explanation. I can read to you what CBE's explanation is. I don't know if that'll help. says the negative values report in the average number of months gained at grade level by at-risk students in literacy at the time of the final assessments would indicate that those students who remain at risk are at a greater number of months behind. This does not indicate that students were not making progress during this time. These values should be considered within the following contextual information. As the curriculum moves forward over the course of the year, the benchmark of what is considered at grade level moves. As such, a student making incremental progress may be at more months behind, e.g. a student in grade 1 who is 4.8 months behind at initial assessment, making no progress would be 8.85 months behind at the final assessment. Months gained would then be -4. And there's a bunch of other stuff in there, but that's sort of one of the explanations of it.
Okay. And that makes sense with
Tyler, I know you
the
have a question.
movement. So Tyler and then Jenny.
A really long explanation for a negative number. I'll tell you how I read it, what I think it is. So if you look at the fourth column where it says average number of months they're behind at initial assessment, they're behind 5.18 months. So at the end of the assessment, they are 1.5 less than that. So theoretically, where they were 5 months behind, now they're 3.5 months behind. They're minus 1.5 months off the behind. That's how I read it. And it makes sense that way. But
And that's how I read it as well. Jenny and then Craig.
I think that makes sense. I think you're all saying the same thing, but either way, it's concerning because we have 2 positive numbers and 1 negative number. So either 2 of these are a concerning result or one of them is a concerning result, right? They should be either all negative or all positive. So one of them, either grade 3 is moving in the wrong direction or grade 1 and 2 are moving in the wrong direction. Is on the third chart number 3.
I think we're talking about chart number 2 still.
Oh, sorry. Okay. That makes sense then for that explanation. By the time we get to chart number 3, that explanation becomes a concern for grade 1 and 2.
I'm wondering if over the next month, as you get more information, if we can bring it back and just, I'm fine. This is only being added as information. It's certainly not. But I think just for us to, I've already gotten questions in regards to the AARR and not in regards to this, obviously, but I know that it's going to be conversations that happen. So I think just if trustees can have, if you get more clarity.
It would make far more sense if the fourth column, if the 5.18 was a minus, that would make way more sense that you were minus 5 months behind and then you added 1.52. But
you gained.
I think I get what they're doing, but I think the negative.
Yeah, it doesn't read very easy to me. And like I say, part of the challenge is, it doesn't matter. It is a bit of a moving target because what is behind grade level in September is different than June. So,
Craig.
Okay, so my concern, grade 4, they're the ones that took the brunt of COVID, 2019, 2020, 2020, 21. And I'm a little concerned that they're 19.96, almost over a year and a half behind where they should be at grade level. And so how are we going to help? There's a couple of questions here. How are we going to help those kids get back up as close as possible? The other concern I have is if you look at grade 1, and that's based on last year, right? 22, 23. 25% of our students are behind. That's concerning. Because if they're starting grade 1, and if they're going through grade 1, and we already have a quarter of our kids behind, that's going to be even tougher for them to get caught up, which means we're going to see it kind of snowballs. I mean, and so I guess my concern is, how are we dealing with those two things? One is the grade 4s are definitely took the brunt of COVID, and there's no way around it. I mean, they did not get, because of being at home and not being in school, no matter how great a teacher we were or are, they lost out. But I am concerned about the kids in grade 1 being 25% below our level. So I guess those are the two questions that I see from this. And I'd just like to, maybe that's something that you could come back next month and talk about without putting you on the spot right now, but it is concerning.
Yeah, no, Aaron and I talked about if the board was interested in having her come in more specific. If you look at the paragraph below, it talks about responses to this and what's being done, but we're happy to talk a little bit more about it. And we do need to get a little bit of a better sense. This data is new, so, and I certainly don't want it to come across as we're trying to say, oh, everything's perfect, that sort of thing. I mean, there's some things in here that we go, that's concerning. And, what is this actual trend here? I mean, theoretically, if you look at the grade 4, if we're reading it correct, that started at 19.66 months behind, and then if they're only 5.44 months behind, that's actually probably a good improvement. If we're actually fully reading that right, I believe we are, but it's a little bit of a moving target for sure.
And I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but it would be good for next month to have a follow-up and better understand the chart, but better understand some of the trends in our division.
Jenny?
Mike, could I ask you, you have mentioned that this is new. Is this assessment new, or is this new to including with is this a new inclusion to this report? Like what I'm wondering is if there's previous year's data that is similar to this that we could compare, and that we could look for trends and look from year to year.
The assessments are new, and they're obviously new inclusions as well. They're part of what I believe they're trying to do provincially is create a level of norms that says this is where you should be at. So we do have that data to compare to the norms. So that's part of what they're trying to do here.
Okay, do we have something that is at all comparable to this to look at previous years at all, or is it totally different?
Totally different, but we do have some literacy data, and numeracy data. We have some FMP and MIPI data.
That's what I was wondering is, okay, and then my other question is, you've referenced a couple of times the Calgary School Board, the way they've kind of looked at this. Are we able to look at some of the results in some of the divisions that are similar in composition to ours and look at a comparison in results as a board? Could we do that? Not now, but for if we're coming back to this again next month, maybe that could be part of what we look at. Thank you.
Christina?
A couple of things I just wanted to remind them about from a perspective or government perspective is that, and like a reminder that when we first doing the new assessment, because that's a question of like, is this a different assessment? And just a reminder that it was because we did some advocacy around trying to support our teachers needing to learn or implement new assessment when we had the quality assessment going, and when the new funds were tied to this assessment, even though we had assessment data for literacy and numeracy, we were already implementing, and so part of it is a shift to the. Yeah, sorry, I'm blinking.
Just switch to the other one, just because online it'll come out.
Thank you. Oh yeah, sound okay. So a reminder that we did have a previous assessment and that this board did do some advocacy around trying to encourage the government to accept the previous assessment data in order to reduce the workload on already stretched elementary school staff, particularly those supporting students with learning needs. So that was just a reminder about context about that one. And then I agree with the concern of the grade 4 is sort of the cumulative piece. And I would suggest that this also informs our conversation that we've been having at different times throughout the year about like the transition and sort of the cumulative effect of getting behind for students, because on average it's about 4.5 months per grade level. So every time you hit a grade, every time you move ahead a grade, this group is getting like an additional 4 months, basically. And so as they get older and older, without these interventions, we might risk, a student moving from grade 5 into middle school, an additional 8 months behind. So definitely an interesting trend for those grade 4s, where their cumulative amount is now approaching critical mass. So appreciate that note.
And I think it is right that gap gets bigger, right, as we get further and further down the road. And I like that you pointed out the piece that we as a board did advocate, and we met with to the extent we met with the Minister of Education to have discussion in regards to our concern. And this is a reflection of the government assigned assessments, not the assessments that our staff have been trained in, and doesn't necessarily reflect exactly what other assessments that our staff have been trained in to do. So our advocacy definitely, we didn't just write a couple letters. We didn't just write a couple of letters. It was certainly, intentional advocacy to look at what's important and best for our students. So go ahead, Christina.
Yeah, thank you, Allison. I appreciate the context. And I just to remind, or additional further context to that comment is just that an appreciation to the many teams that are working on trying to shift gears and have shifted gears, and like the immense amount of training that all the staff had to undergo to switch to the new assessment, and recognizing all the work that has gone into that. That they were well trained before, they're well trained now, they're excellent educators, but that we recognize how much work that has been.
It's definitely something we need to take a look at, as well as how much assessment is occurring and what's the most appropriate. And there is another chart that I want to make sure we get to.
Yeah.
I know there's other questions and happy to ask them, but the other chart provides context as well. So if we're going to discuss the results, we should look at this chart as well.
Yeah. And I think for us to continue the advocacy, but we'll add comment to that after Jenny and then Mike and Craig.
Sure. Just in this conversation about coming back to look at this in more detail next month, I think that it's always difficult. I appreciate Christina's acknowledgement of the hard work and qualification of our educators, and it's always difficult to ascertain complexity in such simple charts, right? And so in just trying to develop context when we look at this again next month, I'm wondering if we could have a little bit of information in understanding what constitutes intervention. So when we say who is receiving intervention, because you already alluded to this, some of these kids on whatever the qualification is for having received intervention, well, some of these students may have been receiving help in the classroom rather than what is officially considered intervention. And so if you're able to give us some further context of what constitutes intervention, and further context into how those decisions are made, because obviously we have higher numbers of students who become identified than those who receive intervention. And so understanding that process of how they're identified, how we make decisions about who receives intervention and which intervention, if you can just give us a little bit when we come back to it again, that type of context, I think might inform this conversation a little bit more for us as a board looking at it.
Yeah, and that's a really good point to remember, because this is different than, say, the results from the AERR, where you get all kids aggregated in the data. This is kids who are identified requiring intervention, and it's only specifically talking about those kids, right? So yeah, so that's important, because that does change the data. And then if you scroll down, Kristen, to chart 3, if you look at chart 3 and we accept the premise that we look at, okay, so in grade 1, we had 274 requiring intervention. Then by the end, it was 214. So that number came down. That's positive. We were 8.56 behind. And then by the end of the intervention, we were those students were 1.51 ahead of grade. This is why, so if we're going to say, well, the literacy, I'm concerned about the negatives, which I agree with that completely, then I guess we're celebrating the positives. And, but that's why I say I take this data with just a little bit of a grain of salt, because it's new. It's not a criticism on the government or anyone. I'd like a little more clarity on what that data is, because it seems really incongruent, the two stories to me. And my guess is the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. Having said that, when you're talking about young learners that require intervention, you can see very big swings. That's one of the reasons why we talk about the importance of early learning. So I'm not discounting this. I'm just saying I would love to be a little more confident in the data. And that's something that we'll continue to work on, but it's not exclusively a Lethbridge School Division thing. It's not a criticism of the government. It's just a new process, and we want to make sure we fully understand it. And particularly when we bring it to a group like this to the board, that we can explain it in a way that's clear and rational. And you could tell from my first explanation that, you know, I'm not 100% confident in exactly what they're telling us. I think it's a little bit of a moving target.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that my remarks are not misconstrued. I do feel that all of our staff, including our support staff, do the best job that they can in educating our students. Some of this could be the number of kids that don't go to kindergarten and then go into grade 1. But I do appreciate, and I want to make sure that they know that we appreciate all of the work that they do, but there are some concerning things within this that need to be investigated.
Yeah, no, and certainly didn't take it any way that, and I don't think it came off that way. I think you raised good points. Like if you look at grade 4 and both the charts, average number that kids are behind, the highest number is grade 4, the highest number of month, right? And this one it's 10 plus, the other one it's 19.66. Yeah, what I want to be confident is to be able to say to the board, if we're at 10 plus, and we're now, so we're 10 plus months behind, at the next assessment, we're 0 months behind. I want to be confident to say to you that, yeah, this is very exciting news. And I mean, hopefully it is, but I'd like to be more confident in that for sure.
Any other questions or comments? And I think that this is an important discussion too, that we can have a zone meeting for those that attend zone, just to have that discussion with other trustees from other divisions. And Alberta Education provides a rep, and we can certainly look at potentially inviting them to provide us as trustees some input on that and as a zone. So those are opportunities for us as trustees that we can ask some more questions too. So go ahead.
Now, do we have to make a motion to add this to our assurance plan?
It was one of the questions I was going to ask. I don't know.
So I move that we add to our assurance plan, page 26, early years literacy and numeracy assessments.
Any further comments or questions? Those in favor? And that's carried. Perfect. Thank you.
Next year, we'll actually have it in the document at the start. Yeah.
Thank you.
Although it did give us a good chance to look at this data and actually talk about this data specifically. Actually, it's probably a good thing because it is new that we spent a bit of time on it. And obviously, we got a need to spend a bit more time on it.
So next is the Superintendent Evaluation Committee. So policy 301.3 evaluation process for the superintendent. So that is in your package there. This was, I brought it to our last board meeting for representing the committee. And then at that point, it was sent out to stakeholders. And I know that this says that we received feedback from stakeholders through the Policy Advisory Committee, which we did. And we also asked people to send in feedback through Kristen. And we received that feedback as well. So that was taken into consideration as well, even though it's not highlighted in here. The comments that were sent from parents or from school councils in was taken into consideration as well. So with that, you have in front of you the amended and marked up copies. Mike, go ahead.
We address one thing on
Yep.
the original, just so you know, and I want to state this publicly so it's known out. Kristen, you'll need to scroll back up. On the original board agenda package, the memo was from me and submitted by me, but it actually should be from Allison. Kristen, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what happened is you cut and paste the body of it, but you had a memo template in there. It had my name on it. And you cut and pasted in, but the thing we had sent you was from Allison. So yeah, that, just so you know, that's why it's been changed now. There is a discrepancy in the original board package that you got that's been corrected. And I think it was just important to state that publicly.
It's funny because I was gonna say that and then I'm
Sorry.
like scrolling and I'm like, but it's got my name on it.
Yeah.
So I had it in my notes, but because this is live on the internet,
Yeah.
it's already updated. Because on my thing too, it's like, it's
Yeah.
got my name on it.
If, like, I have a print copy and it still has my
Your
name,
name,
but
okay.
the updated has Allison's name on it, and
So-
that's the way it should be.
So this committee is chaired by myself and it has trustees and the superintendent sits on that committee as well. So the policy is there for you to see with the markups. So I will open it up at this point to any conversation or questions. If you can scroll to the one with the suggested amendments. We did cover them last month. Yep. Yep, go ahead.
I'll just very quickly share with you some areas that we did get some feedback from stakeholders. That last sentence of the first main paragraph, the board may engage a consultant to assist with the evaluation process. There were some questions about, would the board just do that? Why bring a consultant in? That sort of thing. We discussed that at Policy Advisory Committee, felt that ultimately giving the board the option of having a consultant made the most sense, but there were questions about that. So just so you know. Then the other one, and this first one, number one, the evaluation of the superintendent shall normally be conducted during the first school year of employment, and in the year prior to the potential renewal of the superintendent's term of employment. Those came from Policy Advisory Committee in some of our conversations, just to clean up and clarify the language a little bit. And then on number 5, where it says incorporate input from stakeholder groups as determined by the Superintendent Evaluation Committee, stakeholder groups may include those identified in policy 301.1, superintendent of schools roles and responsibilities. That was some feedback I think that Allison received from the public that we tried to incorporate as well. So just so you know.
Christina.
Thanks for those points, Mike. That's helpful. Point 8, the report shall be approved by the board. Just curious if the report shall come to the board for approval or review. Just presumably the board retains the power to not approve it. Maybe just like a friendly amendment.
Yeah,
to
yeah.
Just
Shall be brought to the board
for what?
For approval.
Yeah.
The report
Just
shall
brought
be brought to the board for approval.
Yeah.
That it shall be approved by the board, regardless what you think, board members.
Should it be consideration of approval?
I think if it's just brought for approval, the purpose is for
Right.
approval, the board then retains within
The
that
right
language the
to-
capacity to do whatever we want with it.
Okay, go ahead.
I did forget one other bit of feedback that I should have mentioned. Point number 4, where it used to say focus on the annual professional growth plan developed by the superintendent in September of each year. We've changed it to include a summary of professional development activities required for certification with CAS. There were questions about why wouldn't we keep the professional growth plan? Teachers do professional growth plans. It's consistent in education. It's maybe more than just a list of professional development activities, might be more in depth. So we had a good conversation about that. Ultimately, we sort of decided that generally speaking, professional growth plans aren't really part of the summative evaluation process. Like if you're doing an evaluation process, you often won't do a growth plan because theoretically the summative evaluation process supersedes a growth plan, and you might get specific feedback from your employer saying you need to do X, Y, and Z, or theoretically it could be things that are used, I could say, well, I want to grow in these areas, and then potentially you could argue that, well, you can't give me feedback or hold me accountable to that because that's already my growth plan. So there's it makes it a little bit messy. So we felt like we would keep it the way it is, and that might be something that's more appropriate in the formative assessment part of it. So just so you know, there was discussion and debate on that one.
And as I had highlighted in November when I brought this forward, that the committee only reviewed the summative evaluation piece as well as the original introduction. And the intentions are that next fall that we will look at the formative evaluation piece to make any amendments or changes to that. Craig?
Yeah, I appreciate Mike bringing up number 4 because that is something that's been taken out of the hands of a lot of boards, is CAS. And so that supersedes the board's authority in that if you're not following through with what you're supposed to do with CAS, then you're in trouble with them. And so the board, and I think people have to understand that this is a new process that the government has instituted, and we have to follow it.
Thank you. So seeing no other comments or questions, I'd like to move that the board approve policy 301.3 evaluation process for the superintendent as amended. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. So next is 10.2 Policy Advisory Committee, and this is Jenny.
I was actually away for this meeting, and so it was submitted by Christine Light.
Okay. So Mike, do you want to cover? I know that you were in attendance.
Yep, you bet. Yeah, sorry, I was just looking something up there regarding policy review. So I've actually got it up here. Okay, first item is the Policy Advisory Committee Terms of Reference, which is one we've been dealing with for quite some time. There are, Kristen, if you could scroll down and just see the paragraph that says composition and appointments. We passed a motion last meeting to amend it. So we have 3 representatives from DSC, 1 from elementary, 1 from middle school, 1 from high school. So the new language is just noted in there. It's already been passed by the board. We just wanted to make sure that we took a look at it in the terms of reference. So we had it within the context of that. Okay, I don't know that we require a formal motion for that since we've already, do you think we do? Yeah. Yeah, we do. And we already approved it by motion, but we probably can approve it again on the terms of reference just to be safe. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I got my. Before we do that, I'd like to ask one more question. If you scroll down a little more, Kristen, see where it says specific annual objectives for 22-23. Technically, this is part of the terms of reference that we passed in September. To me, it doesn't make sense to have this in the board's terms of reference because the committee is going to create them every year, and the organizational meeting happens first, and then usually the first policy advisory committee meeting happens after the board organizational meeting. So I don't know if you're comfortable, if we need to spend if we want to spend a bunch of time talking it. To me, I would just probably take that out of the board's terms of reference and just have that as the committee's terms of reference, and that'll probably come back to you as a report on a regular basis. But it's sort of up to you if you'd like to, you either want to just make that decision now, if you want to explore that a little further.
So I did have questions in regards to, so it says the specific annual objectives for 22-23. So it should be 23-24. And then it also talks about the attached document for the schedule for the year. Do we, has the committee worked on that or know what the schedule is or made that plan for what policies are going to be covered this year? Do you know if that's been decided?
I can answer all that. So
Okay.
Yes, because again, technically this is the board, this was approved, so we don't have the ability technically to go back and change that to 23-24 without the board. And I don't know that we want to put it. We haven't actually gone through that necessarily in our terms of reference, but we have talked about which policies we'll do for the year. Just so you know, the way it's set up is we kind of do it by 100s, 200s, 300s, 400s, 500s, 600s, 7, 8, 9,000. We have had conversations about looking at that process because what tends to happen, I'll give you an example. When I was in the Associate Superintendent of Human Resources role, when you hit the 400s, that's personnel. So I've got a year where I'm doing all these policies nonstop. Then I've got a 3-4 year cycle where I'm not doing anything with policies. And so it becomes this sort of bit of a feast or famine. I think it's not a bad way to organize it initially, but I think we need to give ourselves space to look at, what are the policies that we actually need to take a look at. So if we got a policy that hasn't been updated since 2004, and we got another one that was updated in 2021, maybe we don't need to go, maybe we got to prioritize the 2004. Then we're really not following that process all the time, because we've put a couple policies ahead of the game here that the board has asked the committee to look at this year, which is entirely appropriate. If the board has something that they want to look at, then they should be able to say, hey, we need you to do this. So yeah, we would like to update that a little bit too. So that's another reason why I don't know if we need this in there. Big question for me is, do you feel strongly about having that in there? If you do, then we'll just update it for 23-24, and we'll just have to remember to do it. My recommendation, but you may disagree, is take that out of there, because it shouldn't be in the board's terms of reference, because we're always going to be behind.
Tyler?
I don't think terms of reference should have anything date specific in them, period. I just don't think it's appropriate in terms of reference. So yeah, if you wanted something like that in there, like as a part of terms, you want to review policies, finish any review of any policies, that we would say something like reviewed in the prior year or something like that. If there wouldn't be anything date specific. So if there's anything you want to keep, that's fine. But certainly anything date specific shouldn't be in there in my mind.
Andrea?
For the Wellness Committee, we changed that wording to key duties and responsibilities and took out the dates. And then for a person new coming in, they still know these are things that we need to accomplish that year. So that's how we changed ours.
Jenny?
I wasn't able to be at this last meeting, but from what I understand, my understanding is that the terms of reference are perhaps a work in progress still, and I would prefer to wait to attach a motion to them. I think we're still developing our process for how are we going to decide, like you've pointed out, how are we going to decide our process of determining which policies we're looking at and things like that. So some of the other committees that I'm on, terms of reference are considered to be a work in progress that we will approve toward the end of the year, has been the strategy in some of those other committees. And I would say that perhaps maybe we could do the same with this, as we're understanding the work that we're doing, and it leaves us that room to develop that out and then submit that to the board to consider for the next year is, I think, what might be more effective.
So I think for many of the committees, the terms of references, I think all of the committees, the terms of references have been approved. And then if there's changes, then they're bringing them forward. So are you thinking that maybe that you could take this back and then bring it back with the amendments?
Am I wrong to say this was approved?
These
have been approved.
It
So
was approved.
I don't think they need another motion to be approved again. At this point in time, because we do have an approved set of terms of reference. So I would say let's hold off on making a motion attached to this. I'm a little bit confused by this being in here as an action item.
And I think it was put in here to add the groups. So just to demonstrate that that addition had been from the motion that had already been made. So I think I'm fine with just leaving it the way it is and not making any amendments to it. And then if you choose to bring it back forward with those amendments taken out, that's fine. But I think just go with the work. One of my things is I just want to ensure that that review schedule is being done by that committee, so that it's the recognition by the committee of what policies are going to be worked on, especially knowing now that we have 3 parents that have been added. All of our other stakeholder groups would probably want to be able to know and understand and ensure that policies that they want to ensure are covered. So I think if that could be something that's updated in your reports, what that schedule looks like would be important priority.
Thank you for that. I would agree that that has been a priority outlined in conversation. I apologize I wasn't able to be there at that last meeting and can't speak to that directly, but I will for sure in our next meeting. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I would, Jenny, I would agree it's a little bit messy. If we were just dealing with the motion that we passed last time about the membership and the DSC, and that's the only thing we need to change here, we could do it right away and be done with it. But because of, and I think Tyler's point is bang on, putting specific dates in there, I think is problematic. So happy to go back, rework that part of it, and then we can bring it back to the board, and might as well just do them all at the same time, I think, as opposed to approving part of it, then coming back and approving it again. Let's just get it, because part of my goal is to get alignment with what the board passes and then what the individual committees have, because I'm noticing there's some pretty big discrepancies. So the board has a terms of reference that they've passed, then the individual committee is working on a separate terms of reference. They're usually not significant differences, but sometimes they are. So as much as we can make sure whatever the board has passed, that should be the foundational, that should be in your terms of reference. And if there's more detail that you add, that's fine. But if those two things are discrepant, I don't think that's ideal. So just my opinion.
Craig, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of how to word this. I think there could be some more changes. And so I wouldn't want to change anything right now, because depending on what the board decides, it could change what the policy advisory committee looks at. And so I don't feel comfortable in changing anything other than the three people, depending on how we go down that road.
Okay, sounds good. I think Jenny's received that direction. That's okay. I think you've received the direction to go back to the committee, and they'll bring anything back forward and have the schedule. And no, you're good. You didn't. No, it's good. So next is the policy 5.4.1.1. And Mike, you were there, so if you want to speak to it, and then Jenny would be the one to do the motion on that if Jenny's comfortable to flip in her package. So the healthy nutritional choices policy.
Yeah, and just a point of clarification here, as we work through this. Sorry, I'm trying to find it. So what, well, in terms of the reading numbers, I just want to make sure, because I think this one might have been a leftover one from last year. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe we started it this year. So is this when we reapprove these, do we need to go through first reading, second reading?
That would only be if it was a new policy.
New policy.
Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to
So,
make 100%
and what
sure.
would have happened, the reason that you would have been there as part of this is you would have covered it, and then it went out to stakeholders, and then it came back at the last meeting that you might not have been at. And then this is now bringing it to the board for approval from the board.
Yep,
So
just wanted to make sure.
either of you can guide the walking through.
Yeah, I can walk through it, and certainly if you have questions, by all means. But the concept was to clean this up a little bit. We felt like there was a couple things, and Kristen, if you could make that bigger on the screen, please, that would be muchly appreciated. Thank you. So it sort of delved, it vacillated between being about healthy nutritional choices, and it sort of delved into educational stuff and then out of educational stuff. And we tried to just clean it up to be about nutritional choices. That was kind of the feedback from the committee, that let's not get into necessarily what's happening in the classroom, because there's curriculum and a whole bunch of things in TQS and LQS that guide that. Let's just keep it to actual healthy nutritional choices that are available in the schools. So I can kind of go through, I don't necessarily need to go through point by point, but I'll hit some of the high points of why we did that. Just the first sentence, trying to just clean it up a little bit, make it a little more concise. So it'll read something to the effect of: principals shall ensure schools provide age-appropriate nutritional food choices to students, promote healthy eating habits among students and staff. And that's it. So sort of starting to get out of some of the other areas that maybe a principal wouldn't necessarily be doing. Questions on that? I'll keep rolling unless you have questions.
No, Christina.
Yeah, go ahead.
So this policy would suggest that all schools are responsible to provide food. Is that what I'm reading correctly. So principals ensure that schools provide age-appropriate, nutritious food choices to students. Is that right?
Totally. And even when Mike was reading it out, I'm like, what?
So is that true? Would we, if this were passed, would we, obviously we're not in alignment with all of our policies because things change, but
Christine, go ahead.
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
When providing, food, principals shall ensure, da.
I just feel like we have inconsistency across our division currently in terms of which schools provide nutritional options directly and which ones don't. And I think that's a different conversation than this policy intends to have, but. So would a friendly amendment just be when
Chris-
providing food, principals shall ensure?
Kristen, are you able to live do that? Or maybe she can't get in that document. You can't get in the document? Okay, that's fine. Tyler.
I think there's still a bit of a problem with that though too, because you're saying whenever school is providing food, they're going to ensure there's a healthy choice. Well, when it's somebody's birthday and the school's providing cupcakes, we don't necessarily provide carrots at the same time. So I don't think that works in practice. So I think you still have to come up with some other wording because not everything a school does at all times always offers nutritional choice. Every time you provide food, you're going to have a healthy nutritional choice.
Craig and then Jenny.
Well, I guess I'm going to look at it from a different point of view. This policy should be a procedure because it really comes under administrative choices and administrative duties of our superintendent and his executive to indicate to our schools what kind of nutritional choices they should be having. So I would argue that this should just be given to the administration as a procedure, and that we trust the administration to ensure that all of our students get healthy nutritional choices without us having to go through and look at everything, because it really doesn't have anything to do with governance. This is a procedure, in my view. And so I would just say that we should just give it back to administration.
Jenny.
I appreciate Craig's comments, and I would be in support of moving this to a procedure. My hand was initially raised to offer a friendly amendment in response to Tyler's concern. So depending where we're going with this, that offering of a friendly amendment may not be relevant anymore. So perhaps we should respond to Craig. And if we are changing this to a procedure, as far as process goes, does this need to go back to the policy advisory committee, or is that just a motion we can make as a board?
It would be a motion as the board to remove it as a policy, and then it is assigned then to the superintendent as a procedure.
Okay.
The superintendent would be responsible.
I'll hand it back to you.
Okay. So others comments in regards to Craig's suggestion that this be procedure, not policy? Christina?
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it necessarily. I think the conversation about food in schools is a larger one that I would like the board to be involved in at some point in some way. I think it theoretically comes under, I just had it up, sorry. 504.2 wellness in schools, where we outline what the board considers to mean as physical wellness, which includes nutrition. And so theoretically it could fit there as an example. And I'm not opposed to that. I think administration and staff have a good handle on what is possible and reasonable and feasible. I think as long as we feel like we would retain some ability to offer guidance or direction on food in schools. Because I think it's just, we just heard about the nutrition grant. Like, we know it's an issue, and I think we don't talk about it enough. And I'd like to see it come up at some point.
And I think that that's important, the piece that it's, we're
Mhm.
providing that guidance, not necessarily the operational direction of how to do that. So can you just highlight again what policy number that was so that Mike knows where, if this passes, that Mike knows where could potentially place that
This is
procedure?
just from like an initial Google,
Yep,
which I should have done
overlooking.
before, because
Yep.
that's a good suggestion. And I should have assumed that you would have suggested it. My suggestion would be 504.2 wellness in schools. Given that the regulation in that policy does include regulation 3 physical wellness, that includes the healthy nutrition of the body. Yeah. Can we just ask for any feedback from administration before we consider?
And I think too that as much as you've stated that's the where you see that, you also said that it could be elsewhere. So that's just a suggestion. It certainly should not be part of the motion, but that's just a suggestion where it could potentially go. So administration, what's your thought?
I'm fine either way. I don't feel passionately about it one way or another where it should go. I mean, it really is up to the board. And here's what I'd say: if you make it a procedure, you lose some of the ability to influence this policy. Full stop. That's just the truth of the matter. Doesn't mean that we wouldn't work collaboratively if you wanted it to be some, but when it's under a policy, it's your policy and therefore you have all the rights to it. So that's the only thing to be aware of. The pro is that it's way easier to make changes than, having to go through multiple iterations of it, right? So.
And for me, I think I'm certainly comfortable with moving away from the operation piece and keeping it at the governance, as Christine said, with that guideline piece of this is what we're guiding. And then it's your responsibility to then decide what procedures need to be in place so that that operationally can happen to meet what our guideline is that we've offered. Christina and then Craig. Oh, sorry. Okay. Other administration? No, they're good.
So my other comment would just be knowing that the board often works through like community engagement pieces, food in schools, things like nutrition breaks, come to the board often. Is this something that we're willing to not have power over? Given the interest from the community on the topic of food in schools. That's just a consideration.
Yeah, and I can let others speak and then I can address it. So Craig and then Jenny.
I think as you go through policies, your policy, for instance, if we decided to do a major policy on students, that wellness and physical, all of that would be in there. But this is detailed. And so details need to be procedures. And then we just make sure that our administration is following through on their procedures that follow the policies. So there is that check and balance, even if we sent this from a policy to a procedure. So I think I would prefer it to be that way, but I'm just saying that there is that opportunity because all procedures have to relate to a policy in the division, like when you divide policies, then procedures have to support those policies. So if we have a policy that talks about something like this, but this is a procedure, it'll work.
Jenny?
I agree with what Craig is saying, and I would say that this, what the content of this policy is quite specific and site-based, and so it's not something that we as a board have a direct ability to even oversee. And so governance becomes, I think, inappropriate for being able to see, okay, is food being offered as rewards in classrooms? What's inside our vending machines? I think that those are it is fitting to be in procedure, but I agree and appreciate with what Christina is saying as well, in the fact of when we are looking at the bigger picture of food and nutrition and sustenance in schools, that is a board concern and it is a board initiative. But I believe that those endeavors and governance spaces, they do exist in other policies. And so I'm comfortable moving this as a procedure to one of those policies wherever it's deemed to fit most appropriately. But I appreciate the focus of our board and the response to the public that this is a great concern to us. And I don't think that by moving this to procedure, we are in any way minimizing that for the board.
And I would agree that I don't think with moving it to procedure isn't us losing sight of what gets brought forward to us as important, because we need to also ensure that procedures are in compliance with what our policies are. So if the procedure was to go totally sideways from what our procedure is, then we can certainly vocalize our concerns with that. And we know and we hear the concerns around nutrition breaks, around vending machines, around food in schools and all those pieces. So I think that we continue to hold that role, but give back the operational piece to the staff and the superintendent. So I'm comfortable with this decision if this goes through. Craig?
Would you like a motion then?
I would like a motion.
I move that policy 504.11, healthy nutritional choices, be rescinded and moved over to procedures.
I would like to make a friendly amendment
Sure.
that rather than the move over to procedures, that it be assigned to the superintendent to develop procedure as
Okay.
seen.
And I'd
Necessary.
accept that.
Okay. She doesn't have it yet. Yeah. Your mic on, please.
Moved by Craig Whitehead to rescind policy 5.4.11 and assign assign it to the superintendent to develop the procedure as a procedure. And then, well, you name the policy healthy choices. Great. Move policy 5.11 healthy nutritional choices be rescinded and assigned to the superintendent, be developed as a procedure.
You got that? Okay, so the only, and it's like super simple, is that make sure that it's 5.4.1.1, not 5.4.11.
It's 504.11.
0.1.1. Oh, I'm reading in our package. Okay, so the package is just, okay,
504.1.
perfect. Just want to make sure it's not the wrong points. Perfect. Okay, so we have the motion. I think everybody is clear of what that is. It's providing the direction back to Mike to provide policy procedure as he deems necessary. So any further comments or questions? Seeing none, those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you for that great work and moving through. And I think somebody might have messaged Rochelle. Yes. Okay, come on in, Rochelle. Perfect. Yes. Is there anybody else that needs a break? 5 minutes? Okay, we're going to take 3 minutes just to take a quick break. Yeah. Excellent. So we're back. Thank you. So we have Rochelle with us to speak to us about the potential kinder care pilot project. So I will leave it for you to speak. Thank you.
Michelle, would you like me to start and then you can?
Sure, that would be great. And then I
Is that-
can
is that okay?
talk about the field trip.
So just very quickly before Rochelle starts, it's been well documented that we've been looking at some things related to kindergarten and what maybe we can do to provide help families choose the kindergarten option and make that a more viable option. So Rochelle will talk a little bit about the board did pass a motion asking us to go to Medicine Hat. I believe we've already stated publicly that we've been to Medicine Hat. I think there's been a little bit of an update, but we'll certainly provide a little bit of that. And then we'll get into sort of what we're thinking and what we're potentially exploring as a division. So turn it over to you, Rochelle.
Thanks, Mike. As Mike said, yes, following the motion earlier, we did look at a potential field trip, per se, to go to Medicine Hat. So I had reached out to Joanne Stockman, who's the Director of Learner Supports and Services with Medicine Hat Public. And we took a little team on November 6th to visit Medicine Hat schools.
I'm going to get you to stop for 2 seconds. Just we're going to switch out your mic. Thank you.
See if that's a little bit better. Perfect. Thank you. So on November 6th, a small group of us went to Medicine Hat to meet with Joanne Stockman, and it was board trustee Andrea Andrzejczyk, kindergarten teacher from Senator Buchanan, Debbie Newman, and vice principal from Galbraith School, Nicole Friel. We all participated in the trip to Medicine Hat, and it was the bulk of the day. So a big thank you to Joanne Stockman in Medicine Hat Public, who really set aside the entire day to meet with us, show us some of the programming, and then answer the variety of questions that we had throughout the day. We did visit 2 play and learn programs at 2 different elementary schools, as well as scheduled times to answer questions regarding the logistics of running these in their schools. Medicine Hat Public actually has a wealth of information on their website as well, which helped us in the process. Medicine Hat Public has been running this optional program in all but one of their elementary schools for 3 years with monthly cost to families. Programs follow current school bell times, and they provide strong play-based opportunities for children outside of their kindergarten program time, which we know those play-based opportunities are so important in brain development, particularly 0 to 6. For example, if a child is enrolled in the optional play and learn program, they may attend the kindergarten program in the morning, and then they would essentially extend their day by joining the play and learn program for the afternoon, eliminating that need for that midday pickup to access alternative types of childcare or daycare options. Families that require care outside of that school bell are directed to the before and after school programs that are offered at the school, and then that registration is separate from the play and learn registration. Programs are run by an early childhood educator staff and an educational assistant, depending on the program size. That's a bit of the review of Medicine Hat program, and certainly I can answer any questions you might have, but as we determine if it's something that the division is looking at.
So I'll open it up for questions. Oh, did you have a question? Nope, comment? Are there other, Christina's got a question, go ahead, or comment.
Thank you so much for sharing out about what you've been working on. The full day for them, full day for you too. So thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate the continued advocacy that you have for our littlest learners. I just wanted to clarify as well a couple pieces. For clarity, this would not be a licensed program. So the families accessing it in Medicine Hat are not accessing subsidy, for example.
Correct. There is, in Medicine Hat, there is a monthly charge and it is not subsidized. So they have looked at some alternatives for waiving fees in certain circumstances, but otherwise there is a monthly fee to families. The before and after school care outside of those bell times, if family access that would fall under childcare licensing, and there'd be the option for subsidy for families that would meet criteria.
Christina, go ahead.
We also hear from the families of early learners that, in particular, they're often looking for early education to support with emerging sort of exceptional needs that they're seeing in their children. So things like developmental delays. How did you see that? Was there any takeaways for you that we could consider around how we support all learners?
I think in many cases, the additional time and play with peers is going to benefit and support those pieces for most children. There would be some children where additional support might be required, and Medicine Hat Public has different ways of accessing those supports or guiding parents through that. I don't believe additional supports at this time are put into the programs at Medicine Hat Public beyond the early learning educator that is supporting the program, and then an educational assistant once numbers hit a certain amount.
Jenny, go ahead.
Thank you for this work on this. This is an exciting thing to consider and has great potential. We appreciate you giving it the time and the attention that it required, and that you're able to bring such good information to us. So thank you. You mentioned that this is fee to family. As far as funding the program goes, is that generated income able to cover the costs of the program? Is there additional costs to the division to run the program?
For Medicine Hat, we were told that there is a commitment from the division to offset some costs. The fees alone would not cover the entire cost. Obviously, our division, it would depend on staffing costs and what that looked like specific to our division if we moved forward, but I would anticipate that there would be additional cost to run a program.
I wanted to add my appreciation as well for the team that did go to Medicine Hat and explore and find out what they were doing, and also to you and your team that have worked on and looked at what our possibilities might be here in our division. I think that it is important that we explore some options. I hear every week, for sure, the challenges that kindergarten presents for families that want to be working families and need to be working families, and not having the ability to juggle that in a day where they're taking their kid to kindergarten and then having to transport them to another facility. So I think that this would be a step forward for our division and our community to really support families and what we've heard. And I think if we can do this in any aspect, even if that's small to start out, that I think that is important for our families, and it is listening to hear what has been said to us as well. I've always been a huge proponent for early education and early intervention and ensuring that we are getting our kids in our division early so that we know and we can support them and they can know and learn and understand about schools and what that looks like and what that means, and the importance of that early identification. I know Christine already asked in regards to inclusive supports, and I think that piece is important, would be important for me to move forward with this, would be to ensure that those supports are there. And I think that the additional cost that would be there potentially for our division is one of those pieces where I often say pay now or pay later. And if we're not investing now in our young students, we're going to be paying later for our students when they need even further and more support. So I fully support this, and we'll see where the rest of the board is on this. But I appreciate everything that you've done and the work and the thought that has gone into this. So thank you. Craig?
Yes, I'd like to thank you for going. It's been a concern of mine for a long time. And of course, I do have a vested interest in Medicine Hat because my granddaughter goes there and went through the program, and I have a grandson that will be going through that program. Probably one question that should be asked is, on busing, is that an issue for these kids if they're at the school? If they're bused for kindergarten and they stay all day, they'll be bused home?
Yes.
And that would eliminate some concerns of parents too. So the busing would be taken care of.
Andrea?
Thank you so much for including me on the field trip. I really enjoyed my day with you and Debbie and Nicole, and we were treated so well by Medicine Hat. And I definitely saw the educational value of the program. And I believe strongly that kindergarten is such a pivotal year for children. It really sets them out on the path for the rest of their education. Um, and as we've seen kindergarten numbers decline in our division, I feel that we should do everything we can to help parents make accessing kindergarten for their children as accessible as possible. And so I would very much support a pilot program.
Thank you. Andrea, did you have something else?
I motion that the division explore the possibility of running up to 3 KinderCare pilot programs for the 2024-25 school year. KinderCare programs typically combine traditional kindergarten programming during regular school times with play-based programs during non-school times.
Any other further comments or questions? Those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And Andrea's doing a little cheer there. Thank you very much. I think that that's really important, shows our investment in our little people and our families in our community. So thank you. And we look forward to what's next and what we get to learn next. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for having me.
So next is 4.4, the addition, which is mileage. And Christine, are you okay to speak to that? Go ahead.
So as background, and thank you for adding this emergent item. It is emergent in that we only just very recently received, like this week, I think, information from the government of Alberta that the government of Alberta mileage rate is changing effective January 1st, 2024 for the first time in many years. The change is from 50.5 cents per kilometer to 55 cents per kilometer. And given that the division does typically attempt to offer rates that are at a minimum in line with government rates, as a way to offer reasonable reimbursement for expenses, I'll be motioning to align our rate as well. The cost for the division, based on initial calculations, would be less than $5,000.
Did you want to go ahead with your motion?
Yeah, so I'll make a motion. I move that the Lethbridge School Division mileage reimbursement rate be changed from 50.5 cents per kilometer to 55 cents per kilometer effective January 1st, 2024.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Tyler?
I'd support that change. Cost of everything, especially vehicle related, is going on. And the fact that it hasn't been updated for a long time would be good. The CRA 2023 mileage amount for driving is actually 68 cents for the first 5,000 kilometers. So I don't think that 55 cents is by any stretch out of line. So I think it's good. I think it's overdue and time to be done.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And that will be effective January 1st, 2024.
Yes, we'll get the forms updated on ADW for anybody who has travel after January 1st. We'll have the new rate.
Thank you. So next is one of the favorite parts, division highlights. So who would like to go first? Craig, go ahead.
I have no division highlights because I've been out in the States enjoying the sun and golf.
Other division highlights, Andrea?
I've had such a wonderful December. And so starting at Senator Buchanan with their snowflake ball, from dancing to Santa to crafts, it was all wonderful. They also had a full turkey dinner at their school at lunch today, so that was amazing. I got to attend ICSS, their beautiful concert, and Patterson's beautiful concert with Robbie. We got to sit together, and the music was just outstanding at both of them. Blackston, I got to go to their Winter Wonderland night, and complete with fires outside. It was wonderful, and crafting and pictures. And I was invited by my kindergarten buddy, Alex, who is just turned 6, to his lovely concert at Claxton and the Allison there. And so hearing songs in Spanish and well as well. Oh, sorry, was wonderful. And I just wanted to thank all of the staff at all of the schools for the amazing amount of work that they do to put on these holiday traditions and concerts and activities. And it's just wonderful for the students and their families and how they support each other as well. So, and also I wanted to thank Rochelle and Debbie and Nicole for the kinder care experience as well. So happy holidays to everybody.
Thanks, Andrea. And just to clarify, Alex is at Colbanks? Plaxton.
Oh, sorry. I guess I had Plaxton on the mind. It was Colbanks. It was Colbanks, and it was wonderful hearing the Spanish singing and all the children at all the schools are just so respectful of each other as they wait their turn to sing. And I think that's just so important to all that they learn doing that. So thank you for clarifying that. It was Colbanks. I did get to the right school.
You went to the right school with Alex and the family. So.
Yes. Thank
Perfect.
you.
Jenny, go ahead.
I've also had a really great time just attending some of the holiday themed evenings and daytime performances and celebrations at various schools. I get the privilege of going to my liaison schools as well as my own children's schools. And so I really get a good sampling in our division. And what's really stood out to me as I've been to the different levels and the different schools is the way that it is instilling confidence in our kids. I've been to some of the plays at the high schools and the middle schools and some of the concerts at the elementary and even just the holiday family nights at some of the elementary schools, just to be in their school with their parents and with their siblings and to be so proud to say, look, I drew this one, I made this one, or look, I won the game we just played in the gym, or things like that. You see these kids just glowing and their confidence is being fed and their self-worth is being validated and they're trying new things when they get up and they sing and they sometimes are singing in a different language or they're trying out a new instrument and they're wearing a costume and they're just excited and it just makes me proud of the work that we are seeing our students accomplish and that it's paying off and that they are developing and growing and really learning. So I'll highlight that.
Go ahead.
Jenny, tell them your daughter's reaction to Jenny's daughter was in the Plaxton for Holmes Lozano 4C class. That one was one of the winners of our Re3 contest, but tell everybody her reaction is pretty cute.
She was pretty proud, pretty excited. She came home and said, Mom, I won the contest. And she said, guess where I get to go? And I said, where? And I pretended I didn't know. And she said, to the dump. and then her little brother said, what? And she said, and I get pizza. And so he was on board.
Excellent. Christina, go ahead.
Yeah, so good. And also Jenny just like completely encapsulated the feelings I also have when we go to these concerts and like seasonal shows, just like a real moment in time. And you, especially when we get the luxury of being able to see so many different ones, you can like see the progressions as they get older and it's great. So I got to go to Senator Fairbairn for Glow in the Snow. It was so cool. An entire art room completely black and in black light, and all of the art that they've been making all semester has been in neon colors, and it was like floor to ceiling, completely covered, interactive art displays. It was the coolest thing. It was so great. And then the rest of their fine arts evening was so fabulous. They had the band, they had theater, they had singing, they had dance. They had a screening of a film that some students had made, and I guess the students have recently won like second place in a Quebec film contest, and they're the only, like one of only two English language films that were even accepted into this contest. So some fabulous things happening in fine arts at Fairbairn. I got to go to Westminster, which again, same as Jenny, like convenient double hat. Oh, sorry. My nephew goes to Westminster, so it was great to see him perform. And I just wanted to shout out the team at Westminster for their seasonal celebration. Certainly, Westminster has some of. I live in Westminster as well. We have a very diverse neighborhood, and we know that not all people celebrate Christmas, and so there was a really intentional practice to make it a seasonal celebration that all families could enjoy and feel part of. And so their theme this year was happy songs, and each class got to pick a happy song that made them happy, and their outfit dress code was wear something that makes you feel happy, and it was legitimately such a joyful evening. There was like Shakira and Imagine Dragons, and it was fantastic. So it was just so great to see everyone feel included there. Some highlights to come tomorrow, heading to Galbraith for their winter feast supported by LA Chefs. So thank you so much to LA Chefs for that continued support. Looking forward to sharing some food with our little kiddos at Galbraith. And LCI heading to their band concert over at Southminster tonight if we end on time. And just want to shout out, this time of year is also the Try High food drive. And a shout out to Chinook for winning that one, I think. So congratulations. I know the high schools all work really hard on that. And then final one, sorry, this is the busiest month. Also attended an educational evening with the ATA DARE committee. So it was appreciated, that invitation, and being able to attend and learn alongside some of our staff.
Excellent, thank you. Tyler?
Pretty much all been covered, I think. We're good, thanks.
Perfect. For me, same thing, where it's been a busy month, but it's been a wonderful month just to get out and see the diversity within our schools and from school to school. So I was able to enjoy the winter celebration at General Stewart, small neighborhood community school. And then I go to Coalbanks, and it's 2 nights worth gym filled tickets. And it was hard to get a ticket, and it was like 2 very different winter celebrations. And then having the opportunity to go to Emmanuel Christian Elementary for their Advent chapels. And that is just such a wonderful experience to be a part of, and to see the students and just the joy that they all bring to the gym for those Advent chapels. And then tomorrow I am getting the opportunity to go and serve at Vic Park School and get to serve the students lunch, which will just be a great way to wrap up the week. And if I get an opportunity, the end of the week is back to ICES for their final Christmas chapel. So that'll be a wonderful way to end the week. So it's amazing this month for sure, with all the opportunities to get out to our schools and really engage. And then, of course, school council meetings and division school council. So I was at the Coalbanks School Council, a couple other school councils, and then DSC is a full packed house. And it's always great to have those engaging conversations with parents. So it's been great. Andrea?
Sorry, could I just add something?
No. Go ahead.
It is the month. It is the month. And thank you to the ATA for the wonderful meal that they had us to. That was wonderful. And I too love General Stewart's concert. And then Mean Girls, the musical, 90 plus in the cast, and those kids are Broadway bound. Oh my goodness. So thanks for letting me add those.
Excellent. So I know we're 3 minutes to 5, but I think that our next item I can cover, and if I don't get it done in 3 minutes, then we'll come back after I check at 5 o'clock. So next is community conversations, and I know I said I would give an oral report. So it is, our next community conversation is going to be on Tuesday, February 16th in the afternoon from 1 to 2:30. And we're doing an afternoon one because the first couple were in the evening, and hopefully it gives enough time, if it's parents that are attending, that they still can get out and pick up their students. I should have a confirmation of the location. We're just working out a few logistical details, but it's going to be most likely on the north side of the community cafe. So I will share the location with Garrett, and he will publicize that, but the date is confirmed for the January 16th from 1 to 2:30. So January 16th. Sorry, I said February, right? It's January. January 16th. I know. No, January 16th. January 16th from 1 to 2:30. So I will confirm the details. Hopefully I'll have we're just working out the back and forth, but hopefully I'll have the location for Garrett. I don't want to say it, but I think people will like it. So any questions? Yes.
Given that we have town hall in February, are we also doing one in February?
So often what we've done in February is do it as a virtual one. So we might look at that as a evening virtual opportunity, but we'll take a look at calendars, especially with that week off in February as well. So we'll take a look at calendars and with town hall. So we'll take a look at that and just see availability of schedules. So. Okay. So with that, I think we're 1 minute to 5. Is there anybody on yet? We will wait a couple of minutes then just to make sure. Oh, she's waiting in the lobby. Let's see if she's, and is there anybody in the room wanting to do public forum? Okay. Or is there anybody online wanting to do public forum? Go ahead, Nicole. I will, are you able to turn on your camera for us today? Perfect.
Yeah,
Just,
can you see me?
yep, 2 seconds. So thank you for perspective. The board will listen carefully to your presentation and carefully consider what you have said today. The board will not be providing a response or engaging dialogue following your presentation. We will, however, provide a written response in the near future. So you are up, Nicole.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Can you speak a little louder, or Kristen, can you
Oh.
turn it a little bit? It might be on our end, just no. If you can speak up a little bit, because it is at the highest volume.
Okay, is that better? I feel like I'm yelling.
That's better.
Okay. Okay. So first, I'd like to say thank you to this division for allowing individual school councils the privilege of making an autonomous decision on ASCA membership. But I would like to request that you consider permanently allowing individual school councils the autonomy to decide whether or not they would like to be ASCA members. In other words, every year, individual school councils make that decision rather than going back to how Lethbridge School Division historically has bought blanket memberships for all 26 schools in this division. CBE, Calgary Catholic, Edmonton Catholic, Buffalo Trail, and Red Deer Catholic permit their schools to decide ASCA membership. And I think this membership purchasing style would encourage more meaningful engagement and provide autonomy to individual school councils. As it stands, of Alberta's 57 public and separate school divisions, 52 pay for all their school councils to be ASCA members. In my opinion, an association that allows for blanket membership buying renders itself irrelevant because there's a good chance you may have members who don't even know they are members. Going forward, could this division and board consider allowing individual school councils the autonomy to decide every year whether or not they would like ASCA to represent them to engage with Alberta's education ministry? Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. On behalf of the board, thank you for your presentation. I will just ask if there's any clarifying questions from any trustees. Seeing none, we appreciate you coming forward to express your thoughts today, and you can be assured that the board will carefully consider what you have said today and provide a response in the near future.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Other public forum? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to 12.2 DSC report and the beginning of your agendas. So the main reason.
Kristen, are you able to bring that up first?
So the main reason I had asked for this to be put on here is I just wanted to have some clarification under the superintendent's report highlights. It speaks about the new funding that was announced, and I just want to ensure that this reflects clearly what the funding was. And I know Christine spoke to this earlier, but I just wanted to make sure that we clarify that what that funding is and how our division received it. So if you can provide that for us, that'd be great.
Absolutely. So the enhanced enrollment funding announced by the provincial government gave a school division from increase 1 over last year per FTE. For the first 100 students, it was $1,500 a student. For the next, after 100, it was $2,000 per student. And that was it was a supplement to another enrollment grant they had previously that had based on being 2% over, or if you're greater than 4, you got a greater number. And so they used either or formula. For us, the new formula was the best. So we got for the first 100, $1,500, and then to about, I think, 350 after that, I want to say, for 2,000. So in total, we received $751,000. And we had budgeted under the old method to receive 170,000, and so that was an increase of 581,000. And so currently, we're assessing where the greatest needs are and how to spend that money, and that'll be spent thoughtfully and lots of consideration.
Thank you. I just wanted to have that clarified. Jenny, go ahead.
I'm glad you did, because it was pretty close. Well done. But not exactly accurate. Do you want me to update for exact numbers in this report?
I think Kristen can probably make those changes, and that it's on public record, right? So yeah, and that was pretty much my point in doing this. And then, did you have more about that budget
No,
piece?
I have
Okay.
something else on this. I'm glad you pulled this, because I
Okay.
was remiss in not pulling it myself.
Okay, that's okay.
But Mike has something to say.
Just maybe one thing to add where new funding around announced, because it might not be, if somebody wasn't there for the conversation, previously received 1,000 per child. That's 1,000 per student above projection.
Is that 1,050 over 2% of what we had last year? So it was based on last year's FTE, and then it would, if you were over 2% of that, it was 1,050, yeah, versus kid 1.
So if we can just clarify that language and have that updated, that'd be great. And then I know at the very top, Kristen, if you can scroll to the top, we had a request to amend the name for Viviana just to have her accurate name. So that has been amended. If you had an original package, it isn't. And then the other request that I had for Jenny as the chair is in regards to the ASCA discussion that did happen at the DSC table, was for it to come forward to trustees, and not today, but that had been requested at DSC. So I'm just wondering if you could do a memo for our next board meeting with some information for the trustees as a separate memo.
Yes, I appreciate you pulling that, because
Perfect.
that's what I was remiss in not pulling it. Is in, yeah, okay, I'll do up a memo is probably the best way to do that.
I think just with it being potentially an action item, or at least that information, I think that there needs to be information there that was requested, and however you choose to represent that, but if we can have that to come forward. So thank you. So any other questions about the DSC report that I had pulled? We're good? Okay. So moving on, we have no other items in regards to correspondence received or sent. So at this point, we do have to go back into camera for a couple of items. None of those things will require any type of motion, as far as my understanding or belief is. So at this point, there would be no further need for to enter back into the public recording piece, but I will look for a motion to move into camera. Tyler, and those in favor? And that's carried.